everybody. Welcome to the Forever Bristol City podcast. Today, Dave T, the half relation, is the host today. I am joined by Mr. P, the normal host, but today he's going to be a guest. I'm joined by Mark T, who, as you can see, is beginning his Movember. Well done to you, Mark. Sorry I forgot, but I will start after today, I promise. And I'm also joined by the legend that is Ant. If you know him on OTID, he is Mr. Silvio Dante, so if I call him Dante every now and again, you know why. So, yesterday, let's be honest, we've had better Saturdays. A shout out to the XL Robin Paul Binning, who didn't arrive because of a lot of traffic and roadworks till half time. So, if we think we had it bad, imagine how he felt walking into that stadium at half time. Not the best. So, let's get down to business. And reflections at full time. How are you feeling at full time yesterday?
A bit half and half on this. I mean, I think there's two ways of looking at it. The first way is if you like, the positive way, that is it just running out of steam, a game too far, and actually there's nothing inherently wrong, as were. The second way I look at it is the more analytical way, which was that we came up against a side who were a very good team, but also played in a markedly different way to each of our last three opponents. Where you look at Norwich, Southampton, Birmingham, they've held the ball, they've probed, they've waited for an opportunity. Stoke were at us from minute one. They were hard, they were high pressing, they were going with pace, they were going quickly. And the question, and I raised it on the forum last night, that I've been mulling is, have they given a little bit of a blueprint of the way to play against us, particularly down that left-hand side? Because if you look at smaller instance, I'm thinking the whole game, the Oxford game, teams had joy when they came with pace down that left-hand side. And Stoke came at us with a lot of pace, a lot of power, a lot of directness. And so my feeling is still glass half full on this, because we've had a lot of good performances and we can't take anything away from that. We're still 3 wins in a row prior to that. There aren't major things wrong, but it does raise that question. Are other teams going to see that and the breadcrumbs from other games and say, right, this is how we play against Rubable, and it's high risk because we had a lot of ball, we had a lot of opportunities, not necessarily gilt-edged. They will leave themselves open, but it was almost, you score 5, we'll score 6. So it's an interesting way to see what opponents look at us going forward.
Mr. P, I don't think I've got to ask you this question before. How are you feeling in full time yesterday?
Bloody depressed, Dave, to be honest. Yet again, on the back of 3 wins in a week and Richard Scudamore coming onto the board, a brave new world, all of that. You go into the Stoke game thinking, well, yeah, they're a good team, but you go in feeling confident. And they were at us, as Ant said, they were at us. I thought we got back into the game after the first goal, but then sadly when Radek Vitek throws one into the back of the net at 2-0, Armstrong in those early stages looked useful, those very early stages of the game. But then he went back into his shell, and it was just an afternoon to forget. And with the injury to Atkinson, a lot of players not on their A game, and Stoke on a roll. Mark Robbins, intelligent coach, and as Ant said, he outstrubled us.
Hey, Mark, how about you? How were you feeling yesterday?
I was devastated while I was watching the game, but I think after a couple of hours reflecting, the reality was Stoke were far hungrier than us. They were quicker to the ball. They pressed much better, and that combined with defensive mistakes made it quite easy for them. It wasn't in some cases like we were too high up the pitch and being caught on the break. We just gave them the ball, and we were beaten too easily, especially for goals 1, 2, and 3. Players we could have fouled players, we could have slowed players down, and they had a lot of work to do before they put the ball in the back of the net. The only good thing was we kept going to the end. We got a goal, our heads didn't drop, and we did have plenty of the ball in the final third. We just couldn't hurt them. That was the awful thing. I think it showed our limitations. We're playing with a defender in midfield. Rob Atkinson now looks like he can miss a number of games with a tight hamstring. We don't know whether it's a tear or a pull. So we come up against a Blackburn side on Tuesday who got a great away win at Ipswich, but a great away win at Leicester. Please excuse me, their first defeat this season. But Stoke were a very good team, and with Mubama, a fantastic loan addition to them, just 21 years old. What a powerful unit he is. And Danny Chamadou, they got from Colchester United a couple of years ago. Just good scouting, but he reminded me of Mark Little in his pomp, the way he was powering down the wing. But yeah, 2, 3, 4 of those goals were gifts. We can do
This is
better.
a way to look at it. So let's get down to the game. Well, the starting lineup itself. It was, more or less what we would expect. There was one change on the right hand side, with Sykes coming in for McCrory and Reece coming on the bench with Yeboah dropping out. I'm not going to ask you how you feel about the lineup, because I feel like we've kind of been there and done that for a while. I'm going to ask you different questions instead. So, Ant, I'll start with you first. Instinctively, yesterday, a blip in the road or a weak spot that's been exposed? You touched on it previously, but elaborate a bit more. Do you think it was just a blip, or is there really that blueprint there that you think other teams will look to manage and go out in the future?
First things first, every team has a weakness, and every team can be exploited in one way, shape, or form. So the fact we were exploited yesterday doesn't necessarily mean baby out with bathwater. And I go back to what Mr. P said there in the context of we came back into the game after the first goal, and we'll come to that, but Dickie should have scored and probably got the equaliser there. We had reamed of corners, and I don't want to stat load it because that's a sign of weakness when you've lost a game 5-1. But if you look at the number of chances we had a lot, and that goes back to, it's one of those games where if you say you've lost 5-1, but you've had probably as many chances, probably as many corners, they've been more clinical and taken more advantage. You say, well, actually, it feels more a blip in the road rather than anything else, because there is a school of thought which says that game could go the other way. The reason I go to that blip in the road rather than anything else is I go back to the level of injuries we've got, particularly in that central area where yesterday Viner did look like a defender playing in midfield. But more so, it looked a little bit mentally tired. Mark said about several of the goals could have been avoided. And I think, to give a real example of that, I thought Mubama was, fantastic loanee. First goal, Borges gets turned too easily. But if you look as the ball comes in, before he makes the cross, Dickie and Mubama are stood next to each other. Mubama does a small move away from Dickie, and Dickie heads to the near post. By the time the ball comes in, there's a gap of about 5 yards between them, because Dickie has lost his man. He's switched off completely. Doesn't need to go to that front post, because in a way he's blocking Vitek's view. Vitek should be going for that, if anything. He should be touch tight to his forward. And the nearest guy to Mubama, I think, as the ball comes in, is actually Mark Sykes. So that's switching off. And we did it again on the third goal, because Mehmeti doesn't track the runner as he's coming in. And it means that there's no tackle made. And you can see after the goal, Adam Randall's going absolutely spare. So it's people switching off, as opposed to, for me, a systemic problem. And these are players who have been switched on.
That there leads me into my next question for you, Mr. P. On the back of 3 wins from 3, you would have thought that yesterday was the perfect game to maybe not be tired, but they seem to be making mental mistakes. They seem to lack a gear that Stoke had. With the options on the bench, you could argue that there could be room for Morrison, for you, for Roberts. We have a little bit of youth in Thomas and Pickover around. How much of it is on Struber in not making sufficient changes, bearing in mind that we did have 3 wins from 3 coming into yesterday? Is there any blame there or nothing to be seen?
I mean, look, we had 3 wins from 3 and we had a week off. There was no midweek game. And that's why I felt confident, because look, the next 5 days ain't going to get any better, because Blackburn, good result for them at Leicester, although I think Leicester have got big problems. And then fast improving Watford, they beat Borough 3-0. So, I'm not saying Saturday was a chance to pick up 3 points. It wasn't. But you'd have loved to have come back from Stoke with something, and we haven't. And now we go into Tuesday's game against Blackburn. not must win, but by this time next week, a third of the season will have gone, and it would be nice to be sat there on 25 points. I'm using my favourite word, extrapolation, times 3, 75, playoffs. We could quite easily lose the next two or get one more point. Yeah, one more point. Draw Tuesday, lose at Watford. Because I think I said 2 weeks ago, Watford's going to be a game too far. I'm not going to put any blame at Struber, but this is interesting. This is a text exchange I had with a former player. It wouldn't take too much to work out who it was. And he said, our style is so offensive, it's suicide, but fun. Won't win a thing or get promoted, but the players love the lack of responsibility that only deteriorates and gets worse over time. Now, that person sent me a similar text earlier in the week, even after we'd won, because, and I think I tweeted that under Struber ball, we're going to get these blips in the road without question. You know, if you think about it, Oxford, QPR, and now Stoke. Okay, Preston away and Derby away. We were unlucky that we didn't get all 3 points. But Oxford, QPR, and Stoke have mullered us, basically. Yeah. And yesterday, the scoreline reflected a side that did seem on it from the minute, from the first minute, and exposed the lack of pace that we have at the back. And somebody said, I think Anne said a minute ago, or somebody said on the text feed here, Viner, there's two things. He's playing out of position, and he's also playing with a commitment of somebody that doesn't want to get that 5th yellow card and a suspension. And I think he should just take that on the chin. That's my view.
That's an interesting point on Viner. We'll touch on that a little bit later because it is an interesting point. Mark, what Mr. P has just said there regarding the text about an abdication of responsibilities and it's all fun and games. First of all, do you agree with that? And secondly, were you more closer to angry or disappointed yesterday? Because I feel like there's a bit of money in the bank. I feel like during the game yesterday, that last 20 minutes, I was annoyed. But by full time, it's like, you know what? We've actually got here. We've lost. We're still in the playoffs after losing by a lot. I am not as frustrated and angry as I would expect to be after losing 5-1. How did you feel yesterday with it, Mark?
I was annoyed in the fact that we conceded 5 goals, having only conceded 2 in the other 5 away games this season against Sheffield United and Derby. And Derby, it was Sheffield United, it was a consolation goal, and Derby, it was the one that counted. But I go back to Ant's point. I think we should have taken a more pragmatic approach. We were the away side. We could have tried to play with a low block and hit them on the break. And get them to play some ball in front of us. There was no reason why we couldn't do that, why we had to throw caution to the wind. We could conserve energy because we had players to hurt them. I mean, we did it against Birmingham. Some say probably because we were conserving energy, absolutely, and with the way that the games fell after Southampton. But I just don't understand why we were so open in that game and why we didn't make those tackles or fouls when we could in the open field. Why didn't we just try and slow the game down? I mean, if we hadn't conceded that second goal, I think the game may have been different. Dickey had missed that chance from a header, but it was a free header and he had his head in his hands. So we gifted them the momentum, and that was the problem. Never give a sucker an even break, I think it was W.C. Fields that said that. And that's what Stoke did to us yesterday. They were hungry for it. And as soon as they sensed a team on the wane, they hit us with a flurry of goals. And that was the problem. We really needed to slow the game down, take the impetus out of the game and make them play their balls and make them work harder. We didn't. They just had too much open field to play into. And with a big centre forward in Mubama to play the ball into, and with the pace of Milian Manhoff and Danny Chamadou down the right-hand side, they had all the tools to take us to pieces. That was a bad thing, but it was our lack of diligence, really, in terms of our tactics. I think we should have gone there and just slowed it down a bit.
Okay, it's an interesting. It's an interesting point that what you're touching on is that we were some way like too offensive. I didn't really see that yesterday. I just felt that Stoke were moving the ball around effectively, and we didn't have a gear to match them defensively. And in terms of Borges, he was struggling in that first 15 minutes. But my question for you is it that he was playing poorly, or was he being left too isolated by Anis failing to track runners, maybe the midfield and the defence being too far away? How do you was it on Borges that not being up to standard yesterday, or was he not getting the help that you need as a left wing back?
Multiple things to be true at once. Shamadou was excellent, and therefore, if someone's playing as well as he was, and it's always going to make your opposing number look bad. So let's give credit to the opposition. He was a very, very good player. He had a very, very good game. And again, he came with pace, he came with power, came with directness. Borges played badly. I don't think there's any huge doubt about that. I think when we signed him from Borough, they were more of the mind he was a left-sided centre back rather than a wing back. And yesterday was probably the first evidence I've seen that he wasn't a wing back. The other thing you mentioned, Anis. Anis doesn't do huge amounts of tracking. Like I say, on the third goal, I put him culpable for not tracking the man as he came through. But I'm not with the school of thought that on the first goal necessarily he was at fault, because I saw a comment that he was possibly too high up. I don't think he necessarily was. To roll back to the point of, were we too aggressive? I don't actually think we were. I just think they exploited things better than we did and went quicker than we did. And there was an incident, I probably think in the first half, where we broke and we were too slow to get the ball over to Mark Sykes. I think Twine was going through the ball and then was slow with the pass to Sykes. And then it meant we didn't really get the shot away. That happens quite a lot with regularity. We have got a pattern of playing potentially one too many passes. Stoke weren't. It was bang, 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 bang. It wasn't long ball. It was direct, fast football. And something that sums that up is from, I think it was a corner, Victor Johansson just smacked the ball down the field and left Tanner one-on-one, and they were nearly in straight away. And it wasn't long ball football. It was direct, aggressive, assertive football. But for Borges, it was by far his poorest showing in a City shirt. You wonder how fit Atkinson was, because did his hamstring just all of a sudden go in the first 2 minutes of the second half, or was he possibly feeling it before? Between there were long-standing issues there. But I think it was more so the power and the pace caused us problems, because we are not probably the quickest side at that back line, and they definitely exploited that.
When you take a look at those gaps that we're in behind, and especially down our left-hand side, Mr. P, the first goal. First of all, he gets into position for the cross. Is the cross that good, or is it poorly defended on the inside? How did you see the goal itself in terms of once it gets past Borges?
The first goal, Shamadou rolled him, I think is the phrase, and he had all that space to get the ball in. Ant said earlier about Mubama losing Dickey as the ball came in. I think in the half-time analysis on Robin's TV, Joe Burnell, they were talking about whether Vitek's positioning for that first goal was good as the ball came across, because he sort of he wasn't great. I mean, look, it was just a bad goal. You know, there was too many spaces in the 6-yard box for that guy to race in and whack it into the roof of the net. Yeah, so we were done a kipper by a team that came out of the blocks at 100 miles an hour, and we came out at about 20. That's it. You know, and we got gubbed up there the final game of the season before last, if you remember, 4-0, in a similar fashion. I can't remember who they had as strikers that day, but you know, it's a big pitch, Stoke City, and you know they as Ant said, you know, they played direct, and more teams are going to go down this direct route. You're hearing that on all the national mainstream media. They're talking about, you know, the number of goals coming from dead ball situations and stuff like that. I think there's a sea change going on in the way football is played. And you look, even yesterday when we were 1-0 down, it might even been 2. We're trying to play it out from the back slowly and getting ourselves in a bit of a tangle. So we hit it long anyway. So just why not hit the thing long and adopt that suicide approach that seems to be Struble.
So Mark, we're going to look to you for a bit of positivity at this moment. Was it like, how do you think we responded to that first goal? Because after the first goal, I'm going to half answer your question. I felt we were in the game. Was it really
Well,
that bad once we went behind? I mean, weren't there positive aspects in how we responded in that moment? Give us something,
yeah, we
Mark.
did. We did. Well, we did respond positively because we forced a number of corners, and over the game, we forced 10 corners to their 4. And I think there was I don't part of the first half. I don't know. It was before the second goal where we forced about 3 corners in a row. We just didn't do much with them. I think the worst culprit was Rob Dick. He had a free header. He tried to head the ball down, and it didn't get a firm enough connection. It drifted past the post, and not long after, they scored the goal. I mean, going back to the first one, I think Borges is just not tight enough to Chamadou. I mean, he's got the beating him anyway. But if he's tight against him, at least he can force him one way or the other, and put get into his head. He's about a yard behind him before he turns, and he just goes past him with ease. But as for positivity, yes, we had a lot and I think Ant was saying they switched the ball quickly as well. They were doing that quite a lot, and that's the way that they were. Their directness with Bae Jun Ho on the left, and with Manhuff and Chamadou on the right. But they really targeted our left side with Mehmeti and Borges yesterday. It looks a really open sore for us that teams are going to look to exploit, especially with pace, and that's what they did.
So at this point, we're 1-0 down. I do feel like we're in the game, but I feel like we're in the game from an attacking perspective. And I'm going to throw something to you, and I want you to include the VTech error within it. Do you think that there was an argument that we perhaps as a side believed our own hype off the ball yesterday? Going forward, it was okay, but they weren't doing the dog work, the dirty work. They weren't really at it defensively. They were one step off. They almost believed in too much in themselves that they forgot to do the basics, which culminates in all these silly errors becoming infectious, which leads to the goal. Do you think there's something to that, or am I being too harsh?
I think you're being too harsh. I think if I was seeing it's okay. I think if I was seeing things like, and I take the point that we made about getting caught in possession. There was one where we passed it around the back too much, and then I think Dickey got caught in possession by the corner flag, and in the first half. But I wasn't seeing players believing their own hype. I was seeing players that were playing poorly, and I was seeing a side in Stoke that were well set up to capitalise on that. I go to school of thought that we were totally in the game up until the second goal. We had a lot of corners. What I would say, there wasn't a great amount of quality coming from those corners. And in fact, the best corner I think we took was the first one where we tried to actually play Twining, and he missed it. And I think Randall ended up with the shot. And that looked, Tanner, ended up with the shot. And I think that was a little bit inventive, which always going to need to be, because cliche alert, Stoke are big, they are strong, they are muscly. Therefore, trying to beat them in the air is not the easiest thing in the world. They're going to be well drilled, and Johannes are going to take things that come into his box. So I like the fact we tried something different. But I don't think it was players who believe in their own hype. I think it was players who played poorly, and that those poor performances became contagious to the rest of the side. There are very few players that come out of yesterday with a great amount of credit. Even the consistent players like Adam Randall, he was misplacing passes all over the place, and he wasn't really at it for me. If you said to me, who do you pick as man of the match, and I haven't seen who the pick of the match was per matches, I'd have probably gone with Mark Sykes. I thought was coming out of there with the best performance overall. But it was slim pickings. It's not hype though. It's, I hate to say bad day at the office, because I don't think you ever have a bad day at the office. It's a bad performance, and then it's how much of it is being off, and how much of that, as we say, is the wider melas and people trying to exploit what looks like a potential weakness.
Okay, that's a fair point. And just to try and home it in on VTech himself, Mr. P, there aren't too many clubs, as far as I know, that have two quality goalkeepers that are number ones. Most clubs have a number one and a guy that knows he's a number two and isn't going to play that often. Do you think it's a coincidence that just as Max is coming back for a couple of games, Vitek makes that kind of error, because the goalkeeper is the one position you don't necessarily want that high level of competition. And we know that Vitek's the number one, but we also know that Max is more than capable. Do you think it's just casuality that's happened, or causality?
I mean, Vitek, Graham C with a K, not with a C. Pick me up on my spelling there. Vitek, he's got credit in the bank, yeah. And I got pelters on X yesterday when I said, and this could apply to other players as well, you know, why not give him the second half? Yeah. Now you could argue that, well, that would be damaging to Vitek's confidence, but equally getting on the tail end of conceding 5, that could be as damaging. You could have given Max the second half just to get him back into the swing. That being said, he doesn't need it. And on reflection, Vitek's got enough credit in the bank with what he's done so far this season that you could allow him one like that. I wonder how somebody like Max feels when you're sat on the bench, yeah, and you see him spill that, because the devil in me thinks he's thinking there, ha, 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 ha. You know, he's not all that after all, is he? All of you that are saying he's a major upgrade on me and on himself. And, you know, you got to remember as well that Max is out of contract in the summer. Yeah. So, you know, we could be minus on number 1 and number 2. Of course, Joe Lumley, I don't know how long his contract was, but, you know, he's still going to be around. But Vitek's got enough in the bank to be allowed that one. But it was a horror. It was a horror spill by him. And, you know, as I say, it just compounded a bad day at the office all round, because, you know, Mehmeti, I mean, if you go beyond the defenders, you know, once we're 3-0 down, yeah, we didn't see anything of Mehmeti. We didn't see anything of Twine. Armstrong had gone back into his shell, but he had no service. And then, as Ant said, Randall was misplacing passes, which he was starting to do, to be fair, against Birmingham. Yeah, his play was a little bit sloppy there. So, you know, it will be very interesting to see on Tuesday if we can bounce back and whether Struber will make any changes, because
this is the curiosity, isn't it?
A couple of people were saying, you know, Borges, this was half-time, Borges shouldn't have started the second half, and you got a decent, we're led to believe, and we want to see him, but if he started the second half with Morrison at left wing-back, yeah, nobody would have argued about that. It was shaking it up a bit. You know, why not bring Ollie Thomas on 10 minutes earlier than what he did? But, you know, we can't blame anybody with this.
No, I have to say it was a shocking error to make for the second goal. I mean, it's the first real error that we've seen from him. It's been, I mean, it's one of the worst goalkeeping errors in terms of just so unexpected I can remember. It was just what happened there. I couldn't compute what I'd seen with my eyes. And at that moment, it's like, okay, this game is getting slightly out of control. Now, Mark, the floor is yours. We're 2-0 down, thinking, okay, just try and stay in it from now. Talk us through the third goal. What on earth happened there?
Well, Manahoff, he just strides down. He comes in from the right-hand side, and there must be about 6 or 7 City defenders in the penalty area. There's no way he should score from there, but he plays the ball, and you know, he's not tackled. Plays a wall pass to Mubama, and then strides across the left-hand side of the area by the 6-yard box and hits it low into the bottom left-hand corner. But he's completely unchallenged. Nobody makes an attempt to tackle, slow him down, go to him. There's, like I said, there's plenty of City players behind the ball, but he just comes off the side and it's just pass and move. He takes a chance, and you know, he's just gifted a goal. There's nobody there even blocking the ball. You see players go to ground these days, throw themselves at the ball to make a block. Didn't see one City player do that. I don't know what was in their minds, but it was a great goal if you're a Stoke fan, but such a poor goal defensively, because he had such a lot of work to do. But again, gifted him a goal so quickly after that Vitek error.
And that's the issue, Anne. And I want to come to something here, because if you look at it from an offensive point of view, it looks like a nice movement goal with runners, etc., etc. But does it worry you, the lack of leadership that we had between the second and the third goal? I saw headless chickens at that moment. I saw Anis not tracking back. I saw Borges under pressure. I saw the domino effect of after user, and then the next thing you know, it's in the net. Where was the leadership in that moment, or do we excuse that because of the amount of injury?
You never excuse a lack of leadership, because if you've got an injury, it's somebody else's opportunity. And if you're a professional footballer, then you should be intense enough to want to lead whenever you're on a pitch. Now, I think part of this is the fact the third goal's come so quickly after the second goal. And this again goes back to the point about VTech, the error being completely unexpected. And just on one point there, I think you've got to give good credit to Mabama again there, because the ball doesn't actually go that far away from VTech. You know, it's still within grasping distance, but he's alive and he's on top of it and he's anticipating the error. So I think there's a bit of credit there. Yeah, not saying it's not an error, it's absolutely an error. But I think we're kind of shaken because, and all of a sudden we see the second, they go for the jugular straight away. Now, is it a lack of leadership? I think that we were, to coin the phrase, sixes and sevens. I do go with a point we should have stopped him coming across the goal. I think I do, for that one, I do apportion a lot of the blame to Mehmeti, because I think Mehmeti just stopped. If you watch, the ball is played in, Mehmeti is stood next to Marhoff, and then he just stops. He lets him walk across after he's played the ball. That to me is the bit that's kind of unforgivable, because there's no way you let the guy run off you like that, because he's not even done his job. Because the phase of play is still going on. It's not like where Rob Atkinson turns away on the second goal because he thinks VTech's got the ball. Mehmeti has stopped. And even if he's just a body in the way, that goal doesn't happen. He can be behind him, he can be by the side of him, he can be in front of him.
Yeah.
But he effectively opens it out for a free shot to happen once the ball pass goes in. So for me, I think it's a bit of disorganisation, but I go back to its players switching off. That was totally switching off. And you should always be switched on, but you should particularly switched on after you've conceded, because particular amount of Stoke were going at aggressively, that finished the game. That finished the game as a contest. And again, we can stand behind any kind of stats and what the second half's like, etc., etc., etc. 3-0. The game is,
Game over.
for all intents and purposes, over. And I think that Anis, through all the good things he's done this season, and he has done good things, should be looking at it and going, yeah, I should have done a heck of a lot better there. And I could have stopped that goal, because I could have stopped that shot coming in.
Okay, so you said something there, and Mr. P, I'll throw this to you. Even at 3-0 down, I was having a feeling if we could just get one before half time and turn this tide, we're in this game. I was seeing our little snippets going forward, and I understand what Ant is saying. You know, you're 3-0 down. Let's face it, you're fighting an ocean basically. But I felt like we were still in it if we could just get that first goal before half time. Did you feel anything similar?
Yes. I think if we had gone in 3-1 at half time, there's a thing about Struber ball, and it is this chaos that, you know, they would have gone in not as cocksure as they did going in at 3-0 and 3-1. They're coming out at the start of the second half then thinking we can't concede, because if it goes 3-2, then anything's possible, you know. And we all remember Sunderland back in 2019, was it, I think, or 2018, when they were 3-0 down against us, and they got back. All their goals came in the second half. I think they got back to 3-3, so it can be done. But at 3-0, I mean, that was it. Half time, we hadn't got that goal back, and I totally agree with what Ant said about Mehmeti. Mehmeti is playing to get away from Bristol City Football Club, and somebody's going to sign him for his goals and his assists. And he switched off then. Yeah, he just wasn't at the races. Zach, I said after the Norwich game, he's a player that can go in the summer for a big money move as well. And I remember the little player cam on the final whistle. He was pleased. He was committed. I think Zach's still got Bristol City at heart. And what's holding Zach back now is two things. He's being played out of position, and he's got this albatross of 4 yellow cards. Am I going to get a fifth? That's negating his game. But with Mehmeti, I agree with what Ant said. That was dereliction of duty. It was, I can't be bothered, which is a euphemism for switched off.
Mark, strong words by Mr. P there. Can't be bothered. Dereliction of duty with Anis. How much do you agree with that?
Well, you can only speak from experience and watch. you can only speak from what you can see on the screen. You can see if a player's not trucking back. You can see if a player's being casual. And like I said, you see players throw bodies in front of the ball now, make block tackles. Football's a lot more basic. It should be harder to score goals, not easier, because the whole team defends. You defend from the front, not just the back. So when you see players do like that, looking casual, it is dereliction of duty. I wouldn't necessarily say. I think his time at Bristol City is up at the end of the season, because I don't think his wage demands will match what the club's able to offer him. So he'll probably walk out a free agent. But when you see players not committed, it makes you hang your head in shame, thinking what's going on, because that's not what we've seen for the rest of the season. Really, we've seen players being committed in games, and when you've got your backs to the wall like we are, you need everybody on the same page. It's poor, and I think really we were lucky to get away with 5 yesterday. It could have been a lot heavier.
Well, now, Mr. P, halftime. Previous managers, previous moments, previous times, we've spoken about a lack of bravery, a lack of change. Yesterday, we saw a change at halftime, Reece and Tanner, that ended up making things so much worse somehow that it didn't last that long until we went back to a back three. It didn't work out yesterday. We'll come to the goal and the moments leading to it in a minute. But how pleased were you at the beginning of the second half to see Struber trying something and just going for it? Is that what you want to see more of, or do you think it was too adventurous?
Well, we haven't talked about Tanner defensively, and basically we've been slightly critical of the two left-sided defenders, Atkinson and Dickey. So I just thought that was a strange one, really, bringing on Reece. And I know we say we want to have 2 strikers, but that wasn't necessarily the time to do it. We were weak in midfield because we haven't got Knight there. We haven't got any creativity in midfield. So I thought that was a strange substitution. I'd much sooner have seen Borges taken off and maybe put McCrory on the left. Just go back to stuff that we know. And we say McCrory is a right-sided player, but his best performances for us have been when he plays on the left. So at half-time, I thought, well, at least, that Gerhard's going to give them a more inspirational team talk than perhaps Liam Manning used to. And it seems as though Liam Manning's team talks up at Norwich are becoming legendary in terms of how they start at the start of second halves. But there we go. So, yeah.
The issue for me is, and we didn't really get to see it fully, is we go to 4 at the back, and was it 4-4-2? Was it 4-2-2? Like, how do Anis and Twine fit into that if we're struggling down the wings? It was hard to see how that solved the issue.
Yeah.
And talk us through the first 2 minutes of that second half, the penalty thing that may or may not have been leading to the goal. I felt like we didn't change anything at half time, and it was just more of the same. How is that? How have we got to that point in the second half to concede so quickly?
I mean, I think, we could have given away a penalty quite easily. I don't think it was a pen. It's the first thing. I think the referee got that one right. Again, I go back to a bit of a thematic here with Stoke, where they decided to start the second half hyper aggressively. And probably this is, again, score 5, score 6, etc. Because they were probably under the impression that we would come out aggressive second half, because you expect that, because that's our only way of getting back into the game. They decided to fight fire with fire. We're going at it. And again, it was all down the left-hand side. And I agree with the fact here that actually we don't know what exactly we're going to play. Are we playing Mehmeti left wing, Twine right wing? And I agree, we didn't actually get a chance to see it. I wonder if it would have stayed in place had Atkinson not got injured, because I think the reversion back to the 3-5 was because Rob Atkinson got injured. I also agree that Tanner wasn't doing poorly. I think that was more about, right, if I'm going to go 4 at the back, I've got Borges as a left back already. I've got Dickey I can put here. I've got Atkinson in the centre, and then I can put Sykes at right back. So I can make one change while getting this into a 4-4-2. So I think that's why we did it. But in terms of the first 5 minutes, we cut through far too easily. It happens at absolute pace. We got away with it on the penalty incident. Again, not a penalty. but then it goes straight from Shamadou on the halfway line, breaks with absolute pace. And the bit again, I said I'm not sure what Rob Dickey's doing as Shamadou goes into the box, because it's the smallest of touches, and Dickey starts flying off into the east stand somewhere. He's got no idea where he's going, just running away from the ball. And I think Rob Dickey has been excellent this season. So again, one swallow doesn't make a summer, and so on and so forth. But he was poor yesterday, and I thought he was exposed on that goal as well. But you don't want to get in a position where you've got a Buccaneer in right back absolutely pelting his way towards Rob Dickey, because there's not much he can actually do there, in all fairness. But what he does do, he makes the wrong decision. He doesn't stand him. I'd be asking, just stand up, make him go past you. Also doesn't make a challenge for himself in the ball. He just kind of wanders that way.
Yeah.
So it's poor defending.
If you look at it defensively, first of all, you've got Atkinson, who is limping because his hamstring goes mid-run, which makes everything seem slower. But within the context of that goal, the first thing I notice again, it starts with Anis not tracking, and they really expose that time and again, because the dominoes kept falling. And once he gets up to that run, he's difficult to stop. But Mark, did we learn yesterday in that little 2-minute clip that maybe Dickey can't play in a 4, and if we do go to a 4 in future, it can't be him because he just hasn't got the pace? Or is that too far for that type of goal to make that judgment?
I just think it's too far to make that judgment. I think Chamadou just flicks the ball around him and then runs onto it.
But it's so easy.
It's so easy. I mean, he's in full flight. He's got nobody challenging down the wing because Mehmeti hasn't tracked back again. Dereliction of duty, number 2. And Dickey comes across to him. All he's got to do is slow him down, guide him towards the byline, make him make the cross. He just flicks the ball round him and then goes past the other side and then strikes it into the net. I mean, wonderful goal again if you're a Stoke fan. But what is Dickey doing? I don't think it makes any difference whether he's in a free or a central 2. It's just awful defending from Dickey. He shouldn't be getting beaten. He's not running with the man. He's running towards him, and he doesn't need. It doesn't. I don't know what's in his head. All he's got to do is slow him down, run up to him, make him go outside, guide him towards the outside, make him play the ball. He doesn't. He keeps him infield, and he goes past him, and he's able to take a shot.
Okay. And Mr. P, and used a phrase I like, hyper-aggression. I'm going to use that phrase a lot. I like it. Do you think that we lost the Hunger Game yesterday, Mr. P? Were they hungrier than us across the board?
I think after we're 3-0 down, yes, we did. But they were at it from the word go. We're normally at it from the word go, and we just weren't. They hit us with a goal on 3 minutes. I don't know if that is the earliest one we've conceded this season. Somebody correct me. But having had a week off where there was no excuses for tired legs, we had a full week to prepare. We knew what the team was going to be because it had been successful in the preceding 3 games. You stick with that, and we weren't on it. And Mark's called out Mehmeti for not tracking his man. They were more direct than us. I mean what was it, the goal Shamadou, that was not unlike the goal that Armstrong scored for us against Birmingham last weekend. Just pace and power, and they had Shamadou and Mubama that every time they went forward, you thought they were going to create a goal scoring situation.
And that's what's really curious, because in recent games we've been pretty tight defensively, and we felt like teams were going to have to really work. And Stoke don't exactly have this wonderful goal scoring record. Like I think yesterday they went from 12 to 17 or 13 to 18 or something like that. It's not like they've been destroying every team in sight. My question is, how much was about them yesterday? Did they just have this purple day, or was it on us? And then after that particular goal, then we had the next substitution with Atkinson. It left the back 3 of Roberts, Dickey and Borges. How worried are you going forward about what's happening with our injuries. You know, we're in a lot of trouble, aren't we, in the next couple of games? And how do you feel going forward at this moment? Just to put a pause on the game action, looking forward a bit, knowing that Atkinson is another injury. Is this an emergency now, or what are your expectations?
It's certainly verging on emergency, and let's take it department by department. We're well stocked in the goalkeeper front. Absent Reece being injured, we're well stocked. Debate discussability on the striker front, but we're severely lacking in the midfield and the defensive front in terms of any kind of options. With Rob Atkinson, I think there's a broader question here, and I absolutely think Rob Atkinson's a fantastic player. And I watched the Norwich game yesterday, and you'd have to give me 700 Harry Darlings, and I still wouldn't give you one Rob Atkinson for that. So it's not about ability, but you wonder. He's come back from his ACL. He has regular hamstring injuries. Is there a weakness there? Because I think that's the third time he's had to go off injured this season, and that starts to make you think: is there a problem? And does that question the decision to have let Jamie Knight-Bell go out on loan, for example? Albeit I noticed he wasn't in the Swindon side yesterday, so that may not be the answer. Midfield, you theoretically should have been well stocked. Randall, Knight, Bird, Williams. The thing for me on the injury front, if I take that department in isolation, Knight has happened in a game. Okay, absolutely no issue. It's happened in a game. Bird's, I'm not sure what Bird's issue is, but it seems to be one of those niggling ones that keeps extending and extending slightly. And there's all this aspect around, are the training pictures, the HPC, causing it because the additional firmness is in them. Joe Williams, I think a lot of Joe Williams' injury issues were caused by overwork and being rushed back, and I think that's what happened with Cam Pring last season as well. So I do place a bit of the issue there with the prior regime on that. But we've got a lot of injuries. It's a definite worry. The next international break cannot come soon enough on that basis.
This is the problem, isn't it? We're literally just getting over to international break. I think we've lost Ant, or something may have happened.
Lost down to injuries. Those firm pitches at the HPC that have done.
And is the next squad member to disappear?
I think I'm back now. I think I'm back.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you now. You're back in the game.
No, I thought Halloween was on Friday, Anne.
Yeah, no, fantastic disappearing act.
Now, Mark, moving back to the game.
I can't wait to
the 51st minute, we do put the ball in the net from Reece, but the referee has blown for a head injury. I'm not asking you a question on whether or not he should have blown the whistle, because I think with the laws of the game, it's the right decision. But is the law correct in that particular moment that you should be blowing up after you've won a header, so that you blow in that particular moment, so essentially a goal gets ruled out because a player is down with a head injury? Should that be happening in that particular moment? Do you think the law is right, or is the law wrong there?
Well, if it's the law is the law, there's nothing you can do about it. I think it was who headed the ball? Was it McCrory? I think it was a strong header on. I think it was it Aaron Cresswell?
Yeah, I believe so, and that's my point. I think it might have been Sykes. I'm not sure, but you've won the header.
It might have been Sykes or McCrory that wins the header against Aaron Cresswell. He's not laying out on the ground, prostate. It's in the middle of the move, and he does blow the whistle. He does blow the whistle early. I think it goes over the top of his back. He doesn't go down holding his head. There's a school of thought where he could say in that moment he could have given the goal. It's not put in cleanly by Reece. It's it takes a couple of seconds before it's put in the back of the net. But if those are the laws of the game, you're beholden to them. There's not a lot you can do, really. I think I was more annoyed by the one we'll come on to later.
Mr. P, the penalty decision on Anis going down, correct decision by the referee? How did you feel about that particular penalty shout?
Correct decision. I mean, with our record, we're not going to get anything that's marginal anyway. Yeah, so, but it's all academic. It's all academic by then, isn't it? Really, you're sort of, I'm going off and making myself a cup of tea and seeing how many leaves are falling down on the garden that I got to brush up and thinking they're all wet, so they're not going to burn.
This was the issue. The next 20 minutes was like, okay, we're playing okay, we're getting opportunities, but I felt like by that moment Stoke had kind of just switched off. The work had been done, and they kind of dropped their energy levels a little bit. So it's kind of like dead time. Now we get to the fifth goal. Mr. P, talk us through the wonderful fifth.
Complete and utter balls up, really. It was Dickey playing a short pass to Viner. So again, we're still trying to play it out to the back when 4-0 down. Viner, loose ball. Cisse to Mbama, 5-0. That was sloppy. I wrote on my notes at the time, Viner is not, we're not getting the best out of Viner playing him in that position. I think if he's played 4 games there now, might be 4, could even be 5, but let's say it's 4, he's had about one good half. If you add it all together, he's not
only
the answer.
One good half. You would say only one good half from the 4
if you
games.
aggregate everything, maybe the Ipswich game, maybe I'm being a bit harsh there. He's had one good game out of 4 where he sort of made a difference, and I think that was Ipswich, where I know we didn't win, but I thought, well, this is a bit of a revelation the way he's playing. But I know we'll look forward to Tuesday in a moment or two. But for me, he comes back into the defence, and let's try Ross McCrory in midfield on Tuesday night. That would be my view. But the goal
we'll come to looking forward to Blackburn Gate shortly. Just to finish up, Mark, on this particular one, the fifth goal. Was there anything there that for you? How did you see the goal?
I
Obviously,
thought
there's a
Viner
few
was
errors.
unlucky. I think it's a poor pass by Dickey, and I think it's ahead of Viner, and he can't control it. So he tries to go to the ball, and it runs off his foot. I think to Cisse, he plays it through to Mbama, and he just accepts another gift, and it's 5-0. I think the only good thing after that was our heads didn't drop. We made some changes. I think we brought Urakawa on and Ollie Thomas on, and we did try and score goals. We did try and still continue going forward. We weren't a shambles. This wasn't a shambolic City performance. It was a performance where City were 2 yards slower and a second slower in fault than Stoke, and Stoke were clinical. If you look at the stats, you think you're watching a different game. With the City's corners, slightly lower possession, shots on goal, shots on target. I think Stoke only had about 9 shots on target for their 5 goals. So the stats do lie on this basis, but at least we kept going, and we got that consolation goal from Mark Sykes. And the way that you saw the corner come in, you think, why don't we play that more often? I think we scored like that against Ipswich. We got a player who's on the front post, heading it back over. It's either going to go in or somebody's going to nod it in at the back post. So why don't we do that more? It looks so simple in its execution. And I thought I'd get that one in there because it was one bright spot.
But it was also a U assist, which is worth pointing out. For those of you that are listening later on, I'm about to ask a question to a black screen. So if there is a bit of silence, please understand that's why. And first of all, just touch on the goal and talk us what you saw. But my main question for you is the one positive yesterday. Thomas time on the pitch, additional time, getting your feet under the table. What did you see? What did you like about Thomas's cameo yesterday?
I thought he showed for the ball well. I thought he didn't do anything particularly wrong. Can you hear me as well?
Yeah. No, I just been a twat.
I don't know if you can see me, hear me, what at this present time.
We can hear you.
You're with Darth Vader. You're a little on the dark side.
Am I? That's fantastic.
Carry on.
Do you want me to leave and rejoin and see if this works? And I'll come back in a second. That's probably the best.
Give that a go. Leave and come back. So I'll throw it to you, Mr. P. What did you see from Thomas yesterday?
Well, not a lot. I don't think he was on long enough to really have an impact. As I said earlier, you could have brought him on 15 minutes earlier than what you did. And this business about bringing Reece on at half time, yeah, I know we were 3-0 down. If it had been 3-1, I could see it. But Reece's obviously injury has just come back. We need to bring Reece on. You know, if it's 3-1, you think we can get back into this. But bringing Reece on, you could have bought Thomas on after 50 minutes. Yeah, by then we're 4-0 down, aren't we? But so I didn't see enough of him to form a view. He's a big lad. He's got the physique, not as big as Armstrong, but you know, let's see more. But you know, I would much sooner. You know, I hadn't heard of it. I say I'd heard of him, but I didn't know what he was about. And I'd much sooner see maybe a Morrison given a few minutes because he's been closer to the action than this lad has. Yeah. And clearly, Fale Maulu is totally right out of the picture. Full stop, isn't he? Yeah.
What I would say is that in his short time on the pitch, and I know it wasn't a great deal of time, but it was his flick that leads to the batch of corners that leads to the goal. He did win a couple of free kicks in and around the box. He tended to move possession well. I understand you're playing in a game of a context where the game is won, but I felt like he was bright. You know, I felt like he wasn't out of place, and he's definitely moved up the pecking order. You can expect to see him coming on instead of Fally 100%. And when there are moves to be made with Anis, with Twine, with maybe not up front, shall we say, because we've got two, it wouldn't surprise me to see him given more game time. Now we're going to try this again. And I can see you this time, so I know that you're here. What are your expectations? We're going to move on to the Blackburn game now. What are your expectations?
Yeah, can you shine a light on the Blackburn game, man?
Tell us.
Can I shine a light on the Blackburn game? First off, do I sound normal?
Yes.
Yes.
Get in. That's far, far better. For the Blackburn game, if I start with team, I expect us to line up broadly similar to how we did. I think you're probably going to see Roberts coming in for Atkinson. Struber hasn't shown he likes a great amount of change. I don't think we're going to see a great amount of change. And just to probably pick up on something that happened when I was dark, I disagree that Zach Viner's only had one good game because you don't win 3 games in a row if one of your 2 central midfielders has played badly in all of those games.
Fair comment.
So
yeah.
He's done pretty well there. My expectations are, I still think we've got enough to win that game, almost certainly. I think won't really change anything in terms of how we do play the game. I think we'll still go at it. I think we'll still be aggressive and, again, hyper-aggressive, as we say, hopefully. And I expect us to get the 3 points there. I expect yesterday to have been a blip. I expect a bit of reflection. And I think Blackburn are a worse side than Stoke. And I think we've got enough about us, notwithstanding Blackburn's win at Leicester, which is a very good result. I think we've got enough about us to get the 3 points, even with, again, a little of a patched up make, do, amend. At least with Roberts, he comes in as left-sided centre-back, which is more natural for him. It's probably his best position. But you do have the option of moving Borges there and putting Elijah Morrison at left wing-back. I don't think that'll happen. I think it'll be very straightforward. I don't think you'll see McCrory in for Sykes either, because of how well Sykes played yesterday in the context of a very low bar for the overall performance.
So you first, just to repeat that, you don't expect to see the switch of McCrory for Sykes. You're not expecting that?
No, because I thought Sykes was our best player yesterday. And again, it's a low bar. Okay. I know Struber likes the rotation, but I thought that Sykes played well, and I think probably even if you are looking to rotate and notwithstanding the demands of the position, I think you've sometimes got to reward performance, particularly if I'm talking a load of players not performing to par. I don't really want to pull the one player out who, for me, I didn't have any real complaints with yesterday.
Okay, fair enough. Now, Mr. P, you used some very strong words on Anis. Dereliction of duty, almost accusing him of not quite wanting it because his main focus is goals and assists. I see him as our most creative player. Would you personally drop him for Tuesday and maybe play Thomas or you, players that?
No, I wouldn't drop. No, I wouldn't drop. I wouldn't drop Mehmeti because he 5 goals, 3 assists, goal involvement. It was a bad day yesterday. I mean, he does take a pass too many, as Ant said earlier. We just try and do one pass too many on some occasions. No, I wouldn't I wouldn't drop him. It was interesting what they were talking about last week. Struber was talking about trying to get a different something different out of you. Yeah, they were talking about you as a 10. Now he's not going to drop Twine. He isn't going to drop Twine. I'm not calling for him to drop Twine, but it's all a bit until players like Knight come back. We're just tumbling. We're tumbling the tombola, and we've got 4 balls to pull out, and whichever 4 you pull out, it's all much of a muchness. When everybody's fit, happy days, yeah. But at the moment, we're just trying different. Yeah, it's not. I'm not excited
Here's
about
the issue.
Tuesday.
We've got a game on Tuesday and a game on Friday. There is no way that starting 11 yesterday plays those 2 games.
No.
Maybe you could try and manipulate the minutes in the second half, but you just know it's not going to work deep down. He's going to have to be brave at some point and make changes to begin the game.
You are going to have to be brave. What you're saying that Struber is going to have to be brave at some point, right? And the thing is, what would be nice? I'd love to get if we get a scrappy 1-0 against Blackburn on Tuesday, it's getting 3 points on the board. But as I repeat what I said the other week, we're not playing on the Saturday, we're playing on Friday. So recovery days are minimal. Yeah. And so
what day are Watford playing on in the week?
Sorry, Mark.
What day are Watford playing on? Are they playing on Tuesday?
They've got to be playing Tuesday.
Tuesday,
I guess so. Yeah, I know, but they're coming into their game on Tuesday on the back of a 3-0 win against a Middlesbrough team that had only lost 1 game prior to then. But we're talking about they've probably, with their record in the transfer market, Watford, they've probably got loads of players that they can rotate. I'm just looking at who they're playing. They're away at Ipswich, so relatively local for them. It's just at the A11 to get there. So that they've got a tough game on Tuesday as well. But I'm only saying for us, because we're flogging, again, somebody put this in the text read, we're flogging 14 players, week in, week out, week in, week out, and I still wonder whether Jason Knight, this injury that he's picked up, whether that's symptomatic of him being flogged to death, in the minutes situation.
Personally, I think that he's most likely to put Borges to the left of the 3 at the back, bring McCrory onto the left wing back position, and probably, I guess, he'll start Reece in the next game, and that'll be the changes that he makes. The question is that enough? Because what was striking to me yesterday was the fact that you're thinking, well, it's a 7-day break. This is the best you're going to look. And we still looked a yard short, and that's what's worrying going forward. My personal opinion that it's not the commitment level, it's just the fact that tired legs, tired minds, and they've been put through it game after game, and that is a side that is not fresh. And I think it was Anne, you put it well when you said we need to get to the next international break. But after the next one, there isn't one for a long time.
There's not another one to the end of March. And look at the fixtures.
Exactly.
Look at the fixtures after the next international break, and look at December. If we need to get 3 points on Tuesday night, because and it'd be lovely to have half time ourselves, and then we can make those. We scrap a 1-0 win or a 2-1 win. It's going to take a lot more out of the players, and then against Watford. So in the same way that we have 3 wins in 7 days, we could quite easily end up this time next week with no more points, and we've lost 3 in a row. And then it's, use my phrase, extrapolation. It's 69 points with a third of the season gone. That's just outside the playoffs. So we've got to get something to keep the momentum going. And as I say, Blackburn will be on a high because they got a result at Leicester. And I don't think it's going to be easy. There's no easy games, full stop.
No, it's well put. Now, before we move on to a few changes within the Bristol City setup, I'd like to give a shout out to Weston-super-Mare, second round of the Cup. It's one of those things that people often talk about, the changes within the Cup, the magic of the Cup is gone, the replays being gone. But when you see things like how Weston has progressed, it shows you that the magic of the cup is always alive because there's always going to be these little shocks or these little stories that really people live. And for me, it's a wonderful thing to see, especially when you have a localist club that means something to people in the area. And I'm sure a lot of people around Bristol will go and watch every so often if they can. So please keep it up, Weston, and hope to see you in the third round. And if it was a derby, even better, even better.
I think
Moving
we
back to
should
Bristol.
also acknowledge there that
Sorry?
another lower club who went away to Bromley and battled valiantly to make their way into the second round, and they are real minnow locally. So just good on them, but hopefully they don't progress any further. But it's an equally as big achievement for them, considering they've been getting battered every week.
Well, I think, and since we're praising, and I love that one. I mean, a little minnow they could do with a local derby against other local giants like Cheltenham Town. And what a great job Steve Cottrell is doing at Cheltenham since he's gone back there. I mean, he's restored their league position, and they beat Bradford. That's no easy game. Beat Bradford to go into the second round. Yeah. Anyway.
No, exactly. So back to Bristol City. There's been some changes. When I first heard the news that Scudamore was coming in, I was like, "Oh, this is great." With all the contacts, he's essentially run the most expensive league in the world. He knows how to get things done, and if it isn't under him, then how? But then I speak to Mr. B, and you kind of mentioned that he's been advising anyway, and you were the merchant of doom in my mood. Tell me, what's he going to
What do
bring?
I
How's it
think?
going to
What do I
change?
think? Yeah, well, I mean, some people who maybe watched the Cup from afar thought when they saw Scudamore's name mentioned that we were going to add some form of horse racing to the umbrella that is Bristol Sport. But Richard Scudamore has been sat in the director's box. He's in the director's box for a lot of games, most of the games now. Even when he was chief exec of the Premier League, you'd see him at Ashton Gate when it would be quite easy for him to travel around. He is a very, very, very big figure in the game. But what I want to know, and I mean, the news of it broke at the Senior Reds lunch on Thursday. We were allowed. I did a very short Q&A with Richard Scudamore, so that's when it came out. And I really want to know what difference it's going to make, because if he's been advising for, let's say, a couple of years, and rumor has it that it was he that recommended Phil Alexander as chief exec of Bristol City. Well, that ended well. How is his influence as an advisor to full board member going to change things? Because that's what I want to see. He talks about lack of. He was mildly critical of sponsorship opportunities. We haven't got the stadium named or anything like that. That was what Phil Alexander's forte was commercial deals. And when you're in the Premier League, the people come to you. They want to spend your money. And it was interesting at the lunch on Thursday. Scudamore said he always backs certs, right? Because he said he joined Thompson Corporation, and then and then he was EFL, and then the Premier League. Cert winners. And I put the question to him: will you back certs? What are you going to do? What's going to change to help this club get to the Premier League? Yeah, and we've got Tom Rawcliffe there as chief exec. And now you've got this guy coming in that he's probably going to be in Tom Rawcliffe's ear a bit more than the Lansdowne.
This is the key, and I mean it's only good news, right? It feels more professional. Like people that have been there, seen it, done it, got the T-shirt. It doesn't feel like they're making up. They're moving towards more of a sound structure. It's only good news, right? Do you see any negatives in this move?
I don't. And to answer what changes, I think that sums up in two words to me, which is external perception. Because it's one thing having somebody sat there and consulting and being asked their opinion every now and again. It's another thing someone having real skin in the game and being a board member. Now, immediately, Richard Scudamore joined the Bristol City Board made national news. It was in the BBC website, it was in the Guardian, it was all over, it was in the media. I'm not saying it's front page news, but it's made news. Now, what this wraps up in, for me, is a wider context. And the wider context is this. When Steve Lansdowne comes over from Guernsey, he comes over for the Bristol Bears primarily now. You see him being interviewed about the Bristol Bears. You don't see him being interviewed about Bristol City. I think there was a school of thought that he's lost interest. But just as a quick segue on that, what I would like to do is just give a quick acknowledgement of that. The Lansdowns actually donated a significant amount of money to Marvin Brown's, which I thought was a fantastic gesture. So this is not saying that they're bad people, but what I think they are doing is the groundwork is being prepared to make us more attractive in the market. We know we'd be looking for interest continually. Richard Scudamore and Tom Rawcliffe being there, and then the addition of the management team with the Red Bull-like structure that runs through the whole thing with Struber and the under-21s manager and so on and so forth. It's a hell of a lot more professional than Brian Tinian and John Lansdowne turning up for a sales pitch. It's absolutely a hell of a lot more professional. Doesn't solve the fundamentals of extracting things from Bristol Sport and so on and so forth. All those aspects. Doesn't solve the fact that we think we probably want more money than we're actually worth. But I'm seeing the appointment as being something which is meant to appeal to external investors more, to say, look, we got this guy here. He's in, and actually he's going to remain in situ if you buy us, because most people who are looking at buying us, they ain't going to be saying, right, we want to come over and run things lock, stock and barrel. We're buying it as an investment. Have you got the right people there? This says, yes, we've got the right people there.
Do you think this is more about looking towards the investment, or maybe setting the club side, than it is towards Operation Premier League? Is that understood that way? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Because Operation Premier League relies on Steve Lansdowne possibly breaking FFP to put a significant amount of money in. I'm not ruling out him doing that in January if we're third, fourth in the league and he rolls the dice on it. But I don't think he's shown the inclination to do that recently, and therefore we know we're looking to be sold. This professionalises the sale aspect for me. That's what's behind the appointment.
Okay, perfect.
Totally get that.
Mark, if you want to add anything, go ahead. But I'm throwing the floor to you because it's something outside of the Bristol City world, shall we say. You are starting Movember today. I thought you might like to explain to people what your motivation is for doing it.
Yeah, my motivation is my dad, who's 80 years old, who's living with prostate cancer. So he's facing every day with a beaming smile and support of his family and my mum. And mum and dad have been married for 58 years and have been well supported by our fantastic NHS. My dad's had lots of treatment, but is leaving, very tired during the day. But he's facing each day as it comes in a very positive manner. And if people couldn't donate to my Movember campaign, you can find me on LinkedIn, as well as on the Movember website.
Okay, so thank you for everybody today that listened live. Thank you for Mr. P. You were a fantastic host, and you were a legend as always. And as a fellow resident, Mr. Toby, of course, you were fantastic. It goes without saying. For those that haven't listened live, I hope you've enjoyed the podcast whenever you've listened through your week. Thank you for everybody, and goodbye.
All the best, everybody. We'll see you Wednesday morning at 9 for Blackburn Rovers Home, the review. All the best. Thanks, Dave. Great job. All the best, everyone.